Security! Get this thug off my yacht before he steals something! Emma Rodriguez shrieked the words across the luxury deck. Without warning, she grabbed Kwame Washington's water glass and dumped it directly over his head. Ice cubes bounced off his shoulders onto the marble floor. Whoops. Maybe that'll cool you down. She shoved him backward with both hands, hard. Kwame stumbled, his simple navy blazer now soaked and clinging to his frame. 200 guests in glittering evening wear turned to stare. Several pulled out phones. Emma smirked, hands on her hips. The staff entrance is around the back, boy. Try the kitchen, they might need dishwashers. Kwame steadied himself, water dripping from his salt and pepper beard. The crystal chandeliers above cast perfect light on his calm, intelligent eyes. He said nothing. Have you ever been humiliated so publicly that everyone assumed you deserved it, except you owned the place? 7:47 p.m. Guest arrival ends in 13 minutes. The digital display above the yacht's main entrance flickered with the countdown. Emma Rodriguez straightened her crystal-studded dress, her confidence restored after the public humiliation she'd just delivered. Around her, guests resumed their conversations, champagne glasses clinking against the backdrop of Manhattan's glittering skyline. Kwame Washington stood perfectly still, water still dripping from his beard onto the Italian marble. He reached into his blazer pocket for a handkerchief, a simple movement that revealed the gleam of a Patek Philippe Nautilus on his wrist. The watch disappeared back under his sleeve before anyone noticed. "Ma'am," Kwame said quietly, his voice carrying the refined cadence of an Ivy League education. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. If I could just show you my—" "Save it!" Emma's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "I've worked on these events for 5 years. I know every trick in the book." She turned to address the nearby guests, projecting her voice like a stage actress. "They get bolder every year, don't they?" Probably watched some YouTube video about fake it till you make it. A murmur of uncomfortable agreement rippled through the crowd. Several guests pulled out their phones, not to help, but to record what they assumed was justified security theater. Emma pulled her own phone from her designer clutch, fingers flying across the screen. "Derek? We have a situation on the main deck. Some guy is trying to crash the Wellington Charity Gala, claims he belongs here." She glanced at Kwame with undisguised contempt. "No, he doesn't have an invitation." Obviously. 20 feet away, society blogger Victoria Sterling had been documenting the evening's fashion highlights for her Instagram followers. The commotion caught her attention like a shark smelling blood. She discreetly angled her phone toward the confrontation and went live. "Good evening, darlings," she whispered into her phone's camera. "Victoria here from the most exclusive yacht party of the season, and we're witnessing some interesting drama unfold." The viewer count climbed rapidly. 127, 284, 531, 847 people watching in real time. Emma's voice grew louder, emboldened by the audience. "Look, I don't know how you got past Marina Security, but this yacht hosts Fortune 500 CEOs tonight. People worth more than you'll see in 10 lifetimes." She gestured dismissively at his simple clothing. "You clearly don't belong here." Kwame's eyes remained steady. "I understand your concern about security. However, if you'd allow me to—" "What part of no don't you understand?" Emma stepped closer, invading his personal space. "People like you should know better than to try this. Did you swim here? Because there's no way you could afford the marina fees." The racist undertone hung in the salt air like a toxic cloud. Several guests shifted uncomfortably, but none intervened. This was someone else's problem, someone else's responsibility. Victoria's live stream exploded with comments. "OMG, the racism is so blatant. This is 2025 and this is still happening? Someone help this man. Who is he, though? He seems so calm." Emma's phone buzzed. Derek Walsh, the yacht manager, was calling her back. I'm on my way up, his voice crackled through her speaker. Don't let him leave the area. We might need to involve the authorities. Oh, this is getting good, Emma announced to the crowd, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Derek's bringing security. We'll get to the bottom of this little charade. She turned back to Kwame, who had remained motionless throughout her performance. Something about his composure unnerved her, so she decided to escalate. Everyone, please check your valuables, she called out in a voice loud enough to carry across the entire deck. We have an uninvited situation here. Better safe than sorry. The implication was crystal clear. Gasps and murmurs erupted from the crowd. Guests instinctively clutched their purses and checked their pockets. The atmosphere shifted from uncomfortable to hostile. Kwame's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. For the first time, a flash of something dangerous flickered behind his calm exterior. But when he spoke, his voice remained level. That's quite an accusation, Miss Rodriguez. Emma Rodriguez, head hostess for Prestige Yacht Services, and I've seen enough con artists to spot one from a mile away. She crossed her arms, her body language screaming dominance and disdain. Whatever you're selling, fake Rolexes, pyramid schemes, sob stories, this isn't the place. Victoria's viewer count had climbed past 2,100. The comments were a mixture of outrage and fascination. Someone needs to call this out. Why isn't anyone helping him? Plot twist, he's actually famous. This woman is about to get fired. Kwame reached slowly for his wallet, a movement that caused two nearby guests to step back instinctively. From the leather billfold, he retrieved what appeared to be a business card. Perhaps this will clarify. Emma slapped the card from his hand before he could finish. It fluttered through the air and landed in the dark water below, disappearing into the yacht's wake. Nice try. Anyone can print fake business cards. She smirked at her own cleverness. What's next? A fake ID, forged documents. The digital countdown above them ticked down, 8 minutes remaining. Kwame watched his business card disappear into the black water. For just a moment, the corner of his mouth twitched, not in anger, but in something that might have been amusement. His phone buzzed. The caller ID showed simply, Marcus, legal. He declined the call. Sir, Emma said, her voice now icy with false politeness. I'm going to ask you one more time to leave voluntarily before security arrives. The service entrance is around back. The kitchen staff might need help with dishes that seems more your speed. The racial implications of her words weren't lost on anyone. Victoria's live stream comments became a torrent of outrage, but Emma was too drunk on her own power to notice the growing storm brewing online. Kwame looked up at the countdown timer, then back at Emma. When he spoke, his voice carried a quiet authority that made several nearby guests pause their conversations. Miss Rodriguez, he said softly, I think you might want to reconsider your approach. But Emma was beyond reason, beyond restraint. She had an audience, she had power, and she intended to use both. The only thing I'm reconsidering, she said with a triumphant smile, is whether to have you arrested for trespassing or just ban you from the entire marina. The countdown continued. 7 minutes remaining. 7:51 p.m. 9 minutes to presentation. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime and Derek Walsh emerged onto the main deck. At 42, the yacht manager carried himself with the practiced authority of someone who'd spent 15 years managing the whims of billionaires. Behind him walked 2 security guards in navy blazers, their earpieces crackling with radio chatter. Emma's face lit up with vindication. Derek! Thank God you're here. This man has been harassing our guests and refusing to leave. Derek's eyes swept the scene. A crowd of 30-plus guests forming a loose semicircle, phones raised like modern-day torches. At the center stood a middle-aged black man in simple attire, water stains still visible on his clothing. The man's posture was relaxed, almost serene, which struck Derek as odd for someone supposedly caught trespassing. "Sir," Derek began, his voice carrying the diplomatic tone of a seasoned hospitality professional, "I'm Derek Walsh, manager of the Meridian Dreams. There seems to be some confusion about your presence here tonight. We'll need to see proper identification and your invitation." Victoria Sterling adjusted her phone angle, ensuring her 2,847 viewers could see everything. The comments were flowing like a digital waterfall. "This is getting intense." "Why is he so calm, though? Something doesn't add up here. That woman is so racist it hurts." Kwame reached calmly for his wallet. The movement was deliberate, unhurried, but Emma couldn't contain herself. "He's stalling!" she shrieked, pointing an accusatory finger. "I already caught him with fake documents. Just remove him before he causes more trouble." Derek held up a hand, his manager instincts telling him something was wrong. In 15 years of yacht security, genuine trespassers were usually agitated, defensive, or trying to flee. This man exhibited none of those behaviors. "Emma, let's follow protocol," Derek said carefully. "Sir, may I see your identification?" Kwame's wallet was Italian leather, understated but clearly expensive. As he opened it, Derek caught a glimpse of multiple black cards, the kind reserved for clients with 8-figure net worth. But before Kwame could extract anything, Emma struck again. "Don't fall for it, Derek." "I've seen this scam before. They carry fake everything IDs, credit cards, business cards. Probably got them from some website for $50. The crowd murmured agreement. To them, Emma's explanation made perfect sense. Why else would someone so clearly out of place be so confident? One of the security guards stepped forward. "Sir, how did you gain access to the marina? Do you have a membership card?" "Yeah," called out a guest from the crowd, emboldened by the group dynamics. "How did you even afford to get here?" "The parking alone costs more than most people make in a week." Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. What had started as uncomfortable racial profiling was now being normalized as reasonable security measures. Victoria's live stream had reached 4,200 viewers. She whispered urgently into her phone, "This is absolutely insane, darlings. The tension here is off the charts. I've never seen anything quite like this at a society event." 7:54 p.m. 6 minutes to presentation. Emma's confidence swelled with each passing minute. She had Derek, security, and an entire crowd on her side. This was her moment of absolute triumph. "You know what?" she announced loudly, addressing the gathered guests. "I think we should call the police." This has gone on long enough. Several guests nodded agreement. A few were already pulling up emergency contacts on their phones. "Should we check if anything's missing from the coat room?" suggested a woman in diamond earrings. "Maybe that's how he got the nice watch." Quam's eyes flicked to his wrist, where the Patek Philippe was barely visible beneath his blazer cuff. For the first time, something shifted in his expression, not anger, but a kind of profound sadness at humanity's capacity for assumption. Derek noticed the watch, too. His 15 years of experience told him that particular model cost more than most people's houses. But Emma's narrative had already taken hold. "Probably stolen," Emma said with theatrical disgust. "Or fake. You can get knockoffs that look pretty convincing these days." The second security guard spoke into his radio. "Harbor Patrol, this is Meridian Dreams. We may need backup for a trespassing situation." Kwame's phone buzzed again. The caller ID showed Sarah, executive assistant. He declined the call without looking. "Ignoring your accomplices?" Emma taunted. "Smart move. They probably can't help you now anyway." The digital countdown above them continued its relentless march, 5 minutes remaining. Minutes. Derek was experiencing growing unease. Something about this situation felt fundamentally wrong, but Emma's certainty and the crowd's energy were pushing him forward. "Sir," Derek said, "I'm going to have to ask you to come with us. We can sort this out in the security office downstairs." "Wait," called out Victoria, still live streaming. Shouldn't we at least listen to what he has to say? He hasn't actually done anything wrong that I can see. Emma whirled on her. Are you kidding me? He's clearly a con artist. Look at him. She gestured wildly at Kwame's simple clothing. Does he look like he belongs at a Fortune 500 charity gala? The crowd's mood was turning uglier. What had started as curiosity was becoming a mob mentality. Just get him out of here, called someone from the back. We didn't pay $20,000 a plate to deal with this. Yeah, added another voice. Some of us have actual business to conduct tonight. Kwame looked around the circle of faces, wealthy, educated people who had convinced themselves that their assumptions were justified. His expression remained calm, but those who looked closely might have noticed his hands had curled into loose fists. 7:56 p.m. 4 minutes to presentation. That's it, Emma declared. I'm done being nice. She turned to the security guards. Remove him. Now. Use whatever force is necessary. The guards moved forward, their hands moving to their restraint equipment. The crowd pressed closer, phones recording every moment. Victoria's live stream viewer count had climbed to 7,800. Kwame raised one hand in a calming gesture. Gentlemen, he said quietly, I'd prefer to handle this diplomatically. Diplomacy? Emma laughed harshly. The time for talking is over. You should have left when I gave you the chance. She pulled out a cloth napkin from a nearby table and dropped it at Kwame's feet. Here, clean up the water you dripped on our deck before you go. Consider it community service. The gesture was calculated humiliation. The crowd watched in fascination as this successful woman put an intruder in his place. But Kwame didn't move to pick up the napkin. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. What's he doing? Derek asked nervously. Probably calling for backup, Emma said dismissively. Too little, too late. Kwame's thumb hovered over a contact labeled simply, Bridge. The countdown timer showed 3 minutes remaining until the Washington Enterprises presentation was scheduled to begin. For the first time all evening, Kwame smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Miss Rodriguez, he said softly, I think it's time we ended this charade. His finger pressed the call button. Within seconds, every screen on the yacht went dark. 7:56 p.m. 4 minutes to presentation. The yacht's massive LED screens flickered once, then went completely black. The subtle background music that had been playing throughout the evening cut out abruptly. Even the decorative lighting dimmed, leaving only the essential navigation lights and emergency illumination. 200 guests looked around in confusion. The sudden technological failure felt ominous, like the calm before a storm. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom system. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's scheduled presentation has been temporarily postponed due to technical difficulties. We apologize for any inconvenience. Emma's triumphant expression faltered for just a moment. Weird timing, she muttered, then quickly recovered her composure. Probably overloaded circuits. These old yachts can't handle too much electronics. But Derek Walsh had gone pale. In 15 years of managing luxury vessels, he'd never seen a systematic shutdown like this. His radio crackled with urgent chatter from the bridge crew. Kwame slowly returned his phone to his pocket. The simple movement drew every eye in the crowd. When he spoke, his voice carried a quiet authority that seemed to cut through the evening air like a blade. Mr. Walsh, he said calmly, I own this yacht. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Emma's laugh was shrill, almost hysterical. Right, and I'm the Queen of England. Derek, don't listen to this lunatic. But Derek was frantically scrolling through his tablet, accessing the yacht's registration database. His hands shook as he pulled up the ownership documents. Owner, Kwame Washington. Registration, Meridian Dreams, LLC. Purchase. Date, March 15th, 2023. Value, $127 million. Derek's tablet slipped from his nerveless fingers and clattered onto the marble deck. Victoria Sterling's live stream had exploded to 12,400 viewers. The comments were a blur of shock and disbelief. No way. I knew it. That woman is so screwed. Oh my God, oh my God. That's impossible, Emma whispered, but her voice had lost its edge. For the first time all evening, doubt crept into her eyes. Kwame reached into his blazer and withdrew a slim device, the yacht's master key fob. With a soft beep, the navigation lights changed from white to blue, then back to white. A simple demonstration, but one that sent shockwaves through the crowd. The Meridian Dreams is my personal vessel, Kwame said quietly. I purchased her from the Monaco Yacht Show 2 years ago. Derek scrambled to pick up his tablet, his face flushed with horror. Sir, I had no idea. Your photos in the company database must be outdated, Kwame finished. I prefer to maintain a low profile at my own events. Emma was backing away slowly, her brain struggling to process this reversal of reality. No, no, no. This is some elaborate con. You can't just dash. Miss Rodriguez, Kwame interrupted, his voice still maddeningly calm. What company do you think is hosting tonight's charity gala? He gestured toward the main banner that hung across the yacht's upper deck. In elegant silver lettering, it read, Washington Enterprises Foundation, Annual Community Investment Gala. The banner had been hanging there all evening. Everyone had seen it. But now, for the first time, they were actually reading it. Emma's eyes went wide as the full magnitude of her mistake crashed over her like a tsunami. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. Washington Enterprises, she whispered. Forbes ranked us 15th among America's fastest-growing private companies last year, Kwame continued conversationally. $18.2 billion in annual revenue, 67,000 employees across 38 countries. The crowd was beginning to recognize him now. Phones were frantically Googling Kwame Washington CEO. Images appeared, magazine covers, business conference keynote speeches, the Time Magazine Innovator of the Year feature from 2024. Oh my God, breathed someone in the crowd. He's really... Victoria's viewer count had climbed past 18,000. She was whispering urgently into her phone. Darlings, I am witnessing the most incredible reversal in social media history. This woman just racially profiled one of America's most successful black entrepreneurs on his own yacht, at his own charity event. Derek was now reviewing Emma's employment contract on his tablet, his face growing paler by the second. Sir, on behalf of Prestige Yacht Services, I must offer our most sincere... Mr. Walsh, Kwame said quietly, we'll discuss your company's protocols later. Right now, I'm more interested in understanding Miss Rodriguez's decision-making process. He turned to face Emma directly. She was trembling now, the full weight of her actions crushing down on her like an avalanche. You assumed I was a criminal, Kwame said, his voice carrying no anger, only profound sadness. You assumed I was poor. You assumed I was lying. You assumed I was dangerous. He paused. All based on what, exactly? Emma's mouth moved soundlessly. The answer was obvious to everyone present, but saying it out loud would be admitting to something that could destroy her career, her reputation, her entire life. I was just... Security protocols required, she stammered. Security protocols, Kwame repeated thoughtfully. Mr. Walsh, does Prestige Yacht Services have a policy regarding racial profiling? Derek's voice was barely a whisper. Zero tolerance, sir. Immediate termination. The crowd was silent now, the only sounds coming from the gentle lapping of waves against the hull and the occasional ping of Victoria's live stream notifications. Kwame looked up at the digital countdown, which now showed 1 minute remaining. "Miss Rodriguez," he said quietly, "tonight's event was scheduled to announce a $75 million donation to historically black colleges and universities. The largest single contribution in HBCU history." Emma's knees buckled. She grabbed onto a nearby railing to keep from falling. The presentation was to begin in— Kwame glanced at his Patek Philippe. 57 seconds. Instead, we're having this conversation. He looked around at the crowd of wealthy guests, all of whom were now staring at Emma with expressions ranging from horror to disgust. "My grandfather," Kwame continued, his voice carrying the weight of history, "was denied service at restaurants across the South. My father couldn't get business loans from banks that are now our clients. I built a billion-dollar company from nothing." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Yet here we are, in 2025, and you looked at me and saw exactly what they saw 60 years ago." The countdown reached 0. The screens remained dark. Emma was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks.
"I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry."
But Kwame hadn't revealed his final card yet. "Miss Rodriguez," he said softly, "there's one more thing you should know." The crowd leaned forward, sensing that the worst was yet to come. "The contract between Washington Enterprises and Prestige Yacht Services is worth $187 million annually." Derek's tablet clattered to the deck again. "It represents 1,247 jobs at your company." Emma's sobs became audible now. She had humiliated not just herself, but potentially destroyed the livelihoods of over 1,000 families. "All because," Kwame concluded quietly, "you couldn't imagine that a black man in simple clothes might belong in the same space as you." Victoria's live stream had reached 25,000 viewers. The story was already spreading across social media platforms like wildfire. The reckoning had only just begun. 8:02 p.m. Presentation officially canceled. Kwame Washington stood motionless as Emma Rodriguez sobbed into her hands, her crystal-studded dress now wrinkled and stained with tears. Around them, 200 of America's wealthiest individuals watched in stunned silence, their phones capturing every moment of the most spectacular social media meltdown of the decade. Victoria Sterling's live stream had exploded to 31,000 viewers. The hashtag Yachtgate Racism was trending on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram simultaneously. News outlets were already picking up the story. Derek Walsh knelt on the marble deck, frantically trying to restart his tablet. His hands shook so violently he could barely operate the touch screen. 15 years of hospitality management, and he'd never faced anything remotely like this. "Mr. Walsh," Kwame said quietly, "please stand up." Derek scrambled to his feet, clutching his tablet like a lifeline. "Sir, I cannot begin to express how deeply sorry—" "Later," Kwame interrupted with calm authority. "Right now, we need to discuss immediate consequences and long-term solutions." He gestured to the 2 security guards, who looked like they wanted to disappear into the deck planking. "Gentlemen, you can return to your posts. This situation is now under my personal management." The guards fled with visible relief. Kwame reached into his blazer and withdrew a slim folder that had somehow remained dry despite Emma's earlier assault. From it, he extracted several documents. "Miss Rodriguez," he said, "I need you to look at me." Emma raised her tear-streaked face, mascara creating dark rivers down her cheeks. Her earlier confidence had been replaced by the hollow-eyed stare of someone watching their entire life collapse in real time. "Your employment contract with Prestige Yacht Services, Section 4.2, Clause C," Kwame read aloud. zero-tolerance policy for discrimination based on race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or economic status. Violation results in immediate termination and forfeiture of all benefits. Derek's face went from pale to green. "Sir, we can discuss this privately." "No, Mr. Walsh. This conversation happens here, in front of witnesses, with cameras recording." Kwame's voice remained perfectly level. "Transparency prevents future incidents." He turned back to Emma. "Miss Rodriguez, you publicly accused me of theft. You physically assaulted me by dumping water on my head. You used racially charged language, including calling me boy and suggesting I work in a kitchen. You attempted to have me arrested based solely on my appearance." Each accusation landed like a physical blow. Emma's sobs grew louder. "The legal precedent for cases like this is substantial," Kwame continued, consulting his documents. "Johnson versus Ritz-Carlton, 2024. $4.7 million settlement for racial discrimination in hospitality services. Patterson versus Marina Bay Club, 2023, $3.2 million for similar profiling incidents." Victoria whispered urgently into her live stream. "He's breaking down the legal ramifications in real time, darlings. This woman is facing potential millions in liability." Derek was scrolling frantically through his tablet. "Sir, our insurance covers liability up to $50 million, but if this goes viral—" "It already has," Kwame said simply. 31,000 people watched it happen live. The video will be seen by millions within hours. He pulled out his phone and showed Derek the screen. News alerts were already appearing. Breaking. Black billionaire racially profiled on own yacht. Viral. Tech CEO. Humiliated at charity gala. Watch. Yacht hostess attacks. Washington Enterprises founder. Washington Enterprises maintains contracts with prestige yacht services worth $187 million annually, Kwame continued. This includes marina management for our executive fleet, corporate event hosting, and client entertainment services across 12 locations. Derek was hyperventilating. "Sir, please, can we discuss alternatives?" "I'm not finished." Kwame's voice cut through Derek's panic like a scalpel. "These contracts directly support 1,247 jobs at Prestige, marine engineers, hospitality staff, maintenance crews, administrative personnel. All of their families depend on the revenue we generate." Emma looked up sharply, suddenly understanding the full scope of her actions' consequences. "Additionally," Kwame continued, "Washington Enterprises holds a 31% equity stake in Maritime Holdings Corporation, Prestige's parent company. We acquired this position in 2022 as part of our diversified investment strategy." Derek's tablet slipped from his hands and clattered across the deck. He was no longer just looking at an employee termination, he was looking at a potential corporate apocalypse. "This means," Kwame said with mathematical precision, "that Miss Rodriguez's actions tonight have created liability for her employer, endangered over 1,000 jobs, and potentially violated securities regulations regarding hostile work environment liabilities in publicly traded companies." The crowd was silent, mesmerized by this real-time corporate deconstruction. Several guests were live tweeting the legal breakdown, turning the evening into an impromptu business school case study. "But here's what concerns me most," Kwame said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. Miss Rodriguez escalated systematically. She made assumptions, acted on those assumptions, and doubled down when challenged." He looked directly at Emma. "You didn't see a potential guest. You didn't see a fellow human being. You saw someone you could humiliate with impunity because you believed I had no power to respond." Emma's crying had stopped. She stared at Kwame with the expression of someone watching a natural disaster approach, inevitable, unstoppable, devastating. "Which brings us to solutions," Kwame continued. Mr. Walsh, I require 4 systemic changes implemented by 9 a.m. Monday morning. Derek grabbed his tablet, fingers poised to take notes despite his shaking hands. First, mandatory unconscious bias training for all guest-facing employees. Quarterly sessions, not annual. External facilitators, not internal HR presentations. Cost, approximately $2.3 million annually across your operations. Yes, sir, Derek managed. Second, anonymous discrimination reporting system accessible via mobile app. External oversight by civil rights organizations. Real-time alerts to corporate leadership. Development cost, $800,000. Annual monitoring, $400,000. Derek was typing frantically. Third, diverse hiring initiative for all management positions. Minimum 40% representation of underrepresented groups in leadership roles within 18 months. Executive compensation tied to diversity metrics. Understood. Fourth, Ms. Rodriguez's immediate termination and public acknowledgement of discriminatory conduct. Not a quiet resignation, not a transfer. Termination for cause, with full explanation provided to all employees as training material. Emma's head snapped up. Wait, you can't... I'm not finished, Kwame said quietly. The authority in his voice was absolute. Additionally, Prestige will fund a $5 million scholarship program for underrepresented students in hospitality management. Annual contributions, managed by the United Negro College Fund. Derek nodded rapidly. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Finally, Kwame said, Prestige will partner with the NAACP to develop industry-wide standards for inclusive service. Your company will serve as the pilot program for maritime hospitality equality initiatives. He folded his documents and returned them to his blazer. Total cost to implement these changes, approximately $15 million over 2 years. Derek was sweating profusely, despite the cool evening air. And if we refuse? Kwame's smile was cold enough to freeze the harbor. Washington Enterprises terminates all contracts immediately. That's $187 million in annual revenue, gone. Our equity stake gets divested through hostile tender offer procedures, which typically results in 40 to 60% staff reductions during restructuring. He paused to let the mathematics sink in. Additionally, I personally know the CEOs of 17 companies that currently contract with Prestige. Once they learn about tonight's incident, and they'll face their own internal pressure to reconsider their relationships with organizations that tolerate discrimination. Victoria's live stream viewer count had climbed to 47,000. The comments were a blur of shock and admiration. This is how you handle corporate racism. Intellectual brutality. That woman destroyed her own company. Justice served cold. Emma had gone silent, staring at the deck. The full weight of causing potential unemployment for over 1,000 families was crushing her spirit completely. Mr. Walsh, Kwame said finally, do we have an agreement? Derek didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. All terms accepted. Implementation begins immediately. Excellent. Kwame checked his watch. You have 61 hours and 17 minutes until the deadline. He turned to address the crowd that had been watching this corporate dismantling with fascination. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption to your evening. The bar remains open and dinner will be served as scheduled. Tonight's HBCU donation announcement will be rescheduled for next week. As the guests began to disperse, murmuring among themselves about what they'd witnessed, Kwame walked over to where Emma sat crumpled against the railing. Miss Rodriguez, he said quietly, you have the opportunity to learn from this experience. I suggest you take it. Emma looked up at him through her tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know, Kwame replied. But sorry doesn't undo the damage. Only action does. He walked away, leaving Emma alone with the wreckage of her career and the live stream that would ensure her actions were never forgotten. The reckoning was complete. The transformation was about to begin. 72 hours later, Monday, 8:47 a.m. The Prestige Yacht Services corporate headquarters buzzed with an energy that bordered on panic. Derek Walsh stood in the executive boardroom, surrounded by laptops, legal documents, and 3 cups of cold coffee. His weekend had been a blur of emergency conference calls, contract reviews, and crisis management sessions. Victoria Sterling's original live stream had been viewed 2.3 million times. The hashtag Yachtgate Racism had generated over 847,000 posts across all platforms. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox Business had all run segments about the incident. The Wall Street Journal was preparing a front-page story titled, "When Bias Costs Billions." Derek's phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. Washington Enterprises legal team arriving in 13 minutes. He looked around the conference table at his hastily assembled implementation team. Head of HR Sandra Lane, Director of Operations Miguel Santos, and newly hired diversity consultant Dr. Angela Davis, whom they'd recruited at triple her usual rate for emergency consulting. "Status report," Derek said, his voice hoarse from 3 days of non-stop meetings. Sandra consulted her tablet. Emma Rodriguez was terminated Sunday morning. Security escorted her from the premises. Her access cards, company phone, and laptop were confiscated. Legal is handling the documentation. Public acknowledgement? Posted to the company website and social media at 6 a.m. Press releases went out to all maritime industry publications. We're taking full responsibility for the discriminatory incident and announcing our comprehensive reform package. Miguel pulled up a projection screen. Unconscious bias training contracts are signed. Catalyst Consulting will begin sessions Thursday. All 2,847 guest-facing employees across 12 locations will complete the program within 90 days. Dr. Davis leaned forward. "I've reviewed your existing diversity metrics. They're abysmal. Currently 3% Black representation in management roles, 7% Latino, 1% Asian. Industry average is terrible too, but you're below even that." Derek winced. The numbers were worse than he'd imagined. "The anonymous reporting app is in development," Miguel continued. "Beta testing begins Wednesday, full deployment by Friday. External monitoring by the Southern Poverty Law Center and NAACP." Sandra added, "The $5 million scholarship fund has been established with the United Negro College Fund. First recipients will be announced at their annual gala next month." Derek's phone rang. "Washington Enterprises is here," his assistant announced. "Send them up." 5 minutes later, Kwame Washington entered the boardroom, followed by 3 attorneys and a woman in an elegant business suit who carried herself with obvious authority. "Mr. Walsh," Kwame said, his voice carrying the same calm authority from the yacht. "I'd like you to meet Sarah Lane, my chief operating officer, and our legal team." Derek stood, his hands slightly trembling. "Mr. Washington, thank you for coming. We've implemented everything you requested. Show me." For the next hour, Derek's team presented their comprehensive reform package. Kwame listened without comment, occasionally asking pointed questions that revealed his deep understanding of corporate operations. "The bias training curriculum, Dr. Davis explained, includes specific modules on unconscious racial profiling, economic assumptions, and service industry best practices. Each session includes real case studies, including the incident from Saturday night." Kwame's eyebrow raised slightly. "You're using Saturday's events as training material?" "With your permission," Derek said quickly. "We believe transparency about our failures is essential for preventing future incidents." Approved. Sarah Lane reviewed the diversity hiring metrics. "Your timeline for 40% representation in management seems aggressive. Most companies take 3 to 5 years for this level of change. We're not most companies, Derek replied. We nearly lost our largest client due to systemic discrimination. Aggressive change is the only option. Quame's legal team reviewed the anonymous reporting system specifications. External oversight is crucial, one attorney noted. Internal systems lack credibility with affected employees. That's why we partnered with civil rights organizations, Sandra explained. All reports go directly to external monitors. Corporate leadership receives quarterly summaries, but individual complaints are handled independently. After 2 hours of detailed review, Kwame stood. Mr. Walsh, your implementation appears comprehensive. However, execution will determine success. Understood, sir. There's one additional element I'd like to discuss. Kwame pulled out his phone and showed Derek a news article. 3 other yacht management companies have announced similar diversity initiatives since Saturday. Your incident is catalyzing industry-wide change. Derek felt a complex mixture of shame and pride. Their public humiliation was becoming a force for broader reform. Which brings me to my proposal, Kwame continued. Washington Enterprises wants to partner with Prestige to develop the Maritime Industry Inclusion Standards, a comprehensive framework that other companies can adopt. Derek blinked in surprise. You want to expand this partnership? Discrimination isn't a prestige problem, Mr. Walsh. It's an industry problem. Saturday night proved that even well-intentioned people can harbor unconscious biases that lead to discriminatory actions. Sarah Lane added, We're proposing a $25 million investment in creating industry-wide standards. Prestige would serve as the pilot program, but the goal is transformation across all luxury hospitality services. The Prestige Washington Partnership for Maritime Inclusion, Kwame said. Annual conferences, research initiatives, and certification programs for hospitality professionals. Derek was stunned. They'd gone from facing potential corporate destruction to being offered a leadership role in industry transformation. There's one condition, Kwame said quietly. Emma Rodriguez. Derek's stomach dropped. Sir? She needs rehabilitation, not just punishment. Your company will fund comprehensive bias counseling and diversity education for her, 6 months minimum. If she completes the program successfully, you'll provide a positive reference for future employment. You want us to help the woman who attacked you? Kwame's expression was thoughtful. Mr. Walsh, destroying Emma Rodriguez doesn't eliminate the attitudes that created her behavior. Transforming her perspective might prevent the next incident. Dr. Davis nodded approvingly. Restorative justice combined with systemic change. That's how you create lasting impact. Additionally, Kwame continued, Emma will participate in our diversity training videos. Her story becomes part of the educational curriculum. She has the opportunity to turn her mistake into a meaningful contribution. Derek was beginning to understand why Kwame Washington had built a billion-dollar company. His thinking operated on levels that transcended simple revenge or punishment. All terms accepted, Derek said. When do we begin? We already have, Kwame replied. Industry transformation doesn't wait for perfect timing. He moved toward the door, then paused. Mr. Poole. Walsh, one final point. Your company's stock price has risen 12% since Saturday night. Derek's jaw dropped. What? Sarah Lane smiled. ESG investors are responding positively to your rapid implementation of diversity initiatives. Companies that proactively address discrimination typically see 15 to 20% improvement in stock performance over 2 years. You mean our crisis is actually improving our market position? Properly managed crises often do, Kwame said. The question is whether you can sustain the transformation after the media attention fades. As the Washington Enterprises team prepared to leave, Kwame turned back to Derek. 6 months from now, I'll be hosting another charity gala. Same yacht, same level of scrutiny. Your company's performance that evening will determine whether this partnership continues. Derek nodded. We won't disappoint you, sir. I know you won't, Mr. Walsh. Because now you understand the true cost of discrimination. 3 months later. The Maritime Industry Weekly cover story featured Derek Walsh and his team under the headline, Prestige Transformation from Crisis to Industry Leadership. The article detailed remarkable changes. 0 discrimination complaints across all prestige locations, 23% increase in diverse clientele, and implementation of their inclusion standards by 17 other yacht management companies. Emma Rodriguez had completed her counseling program and was working as a diversity trainer for hospitality companies. Her testimonial videos had been viewed over 500,000 times. Most importantly, the industry itself was changing. The prestige standards had become the benchmark for inclusive service across luxury hospitality. Kwame Washington's quiet revolution had transformed not just one company, but an entire sector of the economy. The incident that began with humiliation had become a catalyst for systemic justice. Sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin with a single moment of human dignity under pressure. 6 months later, December 15th, 2025. The Meridian Dreams glided through New York Harbor under a canopy of stars, her deck illuminated by thousands of twinkling lights. Tonight's charity gala represented more than just another fundraising event. It had become a symbol of transformation, a testament to what happens when dignity meets power and creates lasting change. Kwame Washington stood at the bow, watching Manhattan's skyline reflect off the dark water. He wore the same understated elegance as that night 6 months ago. Simple navy blazer, crisp white shirt, no ostentation, but everything else had changed. Behind him, 300 guests mingled on the expanded deck. The crowd was notably different from the previous gala, more diverse, more inclusive, more representative of America's actual demographics. Black executives, Latino entrepreneurs, Asian tech leaders, and women of all backgrounds moved through conversations with the traditional white elite who had always dominated these spaces. Derek Walsh approached with visible nervousness. 6 months of intense transformation had aged him, but also strengthened him. Mr. Washington, everything is ready for tonight's presentation. How are your team's stress levels, Derek? Derek smiled, the first genuine smile Kwame had seen from him since that devastating night. Confident, sir. We've had 0 incidents across all 12 locations. The new staff actually seem excited about their inclusion training. And Emma. She graduated from the rehabilitation program last month, top of her class. She's speaking at the National Restaurant Association conference next week about unconscious bias in hospitality. Kwame nodded approvingly. Transformation, not destruction. Near the main stage, Victoria Sterling was setting up for another live stream. Her follower count had exploded to 2.8 million after her documentation of the original incident. Tonight, she was broadcasting the Redemption Gala to an audience eager to see how the story ended. "Good evening, everyone," she whispered into her phone. "Victoria here, back on the Meridian Dreams for what promises to be an extraordinary evening. 6 months ago, this yacht was the site of one of the most viral discrimination incidents in social media history. Tonight, we're witnessing the most remarkable corporate transformation I've ever documented." The guest list told the story of systematic change. CEOs from 17 yacht management companies that had adopted the prestige standards. University presidents from 12 historically black colleges and universities receiving scholarship funding. Civil rights leaders who had partnered with the Maritime Industry Inclusion Initiative. Dr. Angela Davis moved through the crowd, no longer an emergency consultant, but now director of inclusion strategy for the entire maritime hospitality industry. Her work had expanded far beyond prestige, creating a new profession dedicated to preventing discrimination in luxury services. At 8 p.m. sharp, exactly 6 months after that night's canceled presentation, Kwame took the stage. The crowd fell silent with anticipation. 6 months ago, on this very deck, I experienced something that happens to successful Black Americans more often than most people realize, he began. I was judged not by my character, my achievements, or my contributions, but by assumptions rooted in centuries of prejudice. The audience was completely still. Many had seen the viral video, but hearing Kwame address it directly carried profound weight. That night, I had a choice. I could have used my power to destroy careers, bankrupt companies, and seek personal revenge. Instead, I chose transformation. He gestured toward Derek, who stood proudly with his integrated management team. Prestige Yacht Services didn't just reform their policies, they revolutionized their entire industry. Today, the maritime hospitality sector has the most comprehensive inclusion standards of any luxury service industry in America. Applause erupted across the deck. But individual company change wasn't enough. We created systematic transformation. Kwame pulled up a presentation screen. The Maritime Industry Inclusion Initiative has certified 347 companies across North America. Discrimination complaints in our sector have dropped 73% industry-wide. The numbers were staggering. What had begun as one woman's racist outburst had catalyzed the most comprehensive civil rights advancement in luxury hospitality history. The Kwame Washington Fellowship Program has provided scholarships to 1,247 underrepresented students pursuing careers in hospitality management. These future leaders will ensure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else. Victoria's live stream viewer count had climbed to 67,000. Comments poured in from around the world. This is how you create real change. From humiliation to transformation. Justice through systematic reform. True leadership in action. Tonight, Kwame continued, Washington Enterprises is announcing our largest charitable commitment in company history. $150 million over 5 years to establish the Center for Economic Justice and Inclusion. Gasps echoed across the deck. This wasn't just charity. This was institutional change funding. This center will research discrimination in corporate America, develop intervention strategies, and provide legal support for individuals facing bias in professional settings. Because what happened to me happens to thousands of others who lack the resources to respond effectively. He paused, looking out over the crowd of powerful individuals who were hanging on his every word. My grandfather was denied service at restaurants. My father couldn't get business loans. I built a billion-dollar company and still faced discrimination. But tonight, we're ensuring that my daughter and every child like her will inherit a more just economic system. The applause was thunderous, sustained, heartfelt. The woman who attacked me that night learned something crucial. Assumptions based on appearance destroy not just individuals, but entire systems. Emma Rodriguez now trains thousands of hospitality professionals annually. Her story has become our most powerful educational tool. Kwame's voice grew stronger, more passionate. This is how lasting change happens. Not through revenge, not through destruction, but through the patient work of transforming hearts, minds, and institutional practices. He looked directly into Victoria's camera, knowing his words would reach millions. To everyone watching, if you've experienced discrimination in restaurants, hotels, clubs, or any service environment, your voice matters. Share your story. Demand accountability. Support businesses that prioritize inclusion. The crowd was completely silent, absorbed in his message. To business leaders, understand that diversity isn't just morally right. It's economically essential. Companies with inclusive cultures outperform their competitors by 35% on average. Justice is profitable. To young people of color, Your success doesn't immunize you from prejudice, but it gives you power to fight systemic bias. Use that power wisely. Transform, don't just triumph. Kwame's final words carried the weight of generational wisdom. Change the system so the next person won't face what you faced. That's how individual dignity becomes collective justice. As applause filled the night air, Victoria whispered into her live stream, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what revolution looks like in the 21st century. Not violence, not destruction, but the patient, powerful work of transforming how we treat each other." The evening continued with celebration, but the real victory was already complete. 6 months of systematic change had proven that when dignity meets power and wisdom, entire industries can be transformed. Your turn to act. Have you witnessed discrimination in upscale restaurants, luxury hotels, exclusive clubs, or premium service environments? Your experience matters. Share your story in the comments below. Every voice contributes to the movement for change. This story proves that systematic transformation happens when we hold institutions accountable, not just individuals. When we demand change at the corporate level, we protect everyone who comes after us. Subscribe to Black Soul Stories for more accounts of quiet power overcoming prejudice, real stories of Black excellence, dignity under pressure, and the intellectual courage that transforms entire systems. Share this video if you believe that everyone deserves respect regardless of their appearance, race, or assumptions about their background. Together, we can create spaces where character matters more than color, where achievement speaks louder than assumptions. Because true power isn't about dominance, it's about using your success to ensure others don't face the barriers you overcame. The revolution continues with every story shared, every bias challenged, every system transformed.